Welcome everybody to the second in our artificial intelligence series. Thank you for joining us today. Today we'll be joined by Dr. Vera Klekovkina, who began her academic journey at Butler University, where she majored in French studies. She received her MA and her PhD at UCLA. It was a lot of letters. I'm really proud of myself for doing that. Then joined UWSP in 2011. Since that time, she has taught French, coordinated the Study Abroad in France program, and she is currently the chair of the Department of World Languages and Literature. She recently received promotion to full professor, so congratulations, Dr. Klekovkina. She's completed scholarly works on Marcel Proust's writings, has interests in cinema, women's literature, memory, and psychology, as well as technology. But these, though impressive, are not the reasons that we've invited Dr. Klekovkina to be with us today. I have had the great pleasure of working with Vera on the assessment subcommittee. She serves as the assessment coordinator for UWSP, and in her capacity as the assessment coordinator, we have her here today. Her interest in applying new technologies has led to some simplifications in our assessment procedures and into better means of collecting data for campus assessment. And I think that it is kind of that attitude, that proactive and forward attitude toward technology, that makes her a real asset in these sorts of discussions. So she's going to speak to us today about AI and assessment in her talk, The Joy and Assessment of Learning in AI Supported Times. So if you can please welcome Dr. Klekovkina.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Thank you. Today I will be talking while kind of trying to still carry two hats. So I will be talking as the language instructor because I have experienced disruption from Google Translate, and I want to share with you how I dealt with it and how I continue to promote responsible use of AI tools in my language classrooms, but also now in my English classrooms because I teach intercultural communication and cinema, but also as the assessment coordinator. Though I'm not going to give the recipe of how we should do assessment, though I am very fortunate to work with the assessment subcommittee and also GEC, with General Education Committee. And we talk about assessment of student learning outcomes for programs as well as for general education program. And we definitely need to start thinking about it. And that was an email that I wrote in the summer to the chancellor, because I felt compelled that we have to think about our assessment for HLC, meaning if we say that we assess student learning, then we really need to make sure that we're assessing student learning and not machine doing, right? And as part of the ad hoc working group on AI policies, I'm really hoping to participate in this discussion because I don't have the answers. And so today, the way I structured this talk is more about kind of philosophical approach to this subject matter that can help us to think about why we need to use these tools and which tools we already have. I will ask you also what tools you already implement in your classroom, and maybe you found a great solution to have kind of ChatGPT proven assignments and you want to share with us. I created a little survey that everybody can participate. So that's what I think my hopes for today are. And so when I was preparing this presentation, I thought about questions that lead my inquiry in the role of AI. And I've been working on AI for quite a bit because students really respond well to AI. It's their present and future. And I want to meet them where they are, but also bring the question of why we're doing this. And so 3 questions that structured my thought process were, why do we learn? Why do we want to save time? And why do we automate? So the first question was education and joy. Why did I think about joy immediately when I thought about education? When I'll tell you, for me, learning is the best game in town. And I tell that students, and sometimes I joke that it's even better than sex, eating, or drugs. And they laugh, and they're like, yes, but think about it. You can do it solo, with a partner, you can do it at any time, private or public, yeah. And they're like, oh, well, I guess. And you never disappoint because there is more to learn. It's never right in discovery. And so when in the summer, last summer, I participated in WAFL, which is Wisconsin Association for Language Teachers, Summer Institute on Global Education, I was introduced to Dr. Goldie Muhammad's work. And we really studied her Cultivating Genius book and for an equity framework for culturally and historically responsive literacy. I loved it so much that I decided I'm going to purchase the second book that just came out in 2023, Unearthing Joy, because in her framework of culturally and historically responsive education, she talks about 5 pursuits. So those are not learning goals per se, because they don't have an end, but they are pursuits. And the way she used this framework was from her research on Black literacy societies in the US. And what she found out that members of those societies, really their goals, their pursuits were very noble, not only to learn how to read and be accepted for who they are, but though they were some of this, but they were much larger. So the pursuit of identity was the foundation, and she uses this as goals or pursuits for students. So if we were to pursue identity formation for our students in our classroom, we would be advancing their knowledge and affirmation of self and others. If we pursue skill development, then we would advance their content area skills and proficiency. We would also pursue intellect with them and advance their knowledge put into action. We would pursue criticality. And Donna, of course, I thought right away of you, like, yes, our critical thinking initiative. That's exactly what we're doing, right? We're advancing students' understanding of oppression, equity, and anti-racism by teaching them how to think, how to ask questions, how to understand the power dynamics or authority that try to disguise their authority behind different speeches and propagandas, right? So all of that we do, but we also should do joy. And I love this because for me, again, learning is joyful. And when she talked about bringing joy as a pursuit in learning, it really talked to my heart, because I want to advance students' happiness by elevating and truthful images, representations, and narratives about self and others. And that's why if we use this framework, we can really help them to be culturally and historically responsive, meaning we can find representations of all cultural minorities in our classroom or via the information we're learning and presenting in class. And so this diagram happens on the page 130, and it's a phenomenal text. She actually brings playlists and artwork into the book. The book was so beautiful. When I got it from the library, I must have it. I must buy it. And I bought it from Amazon because it was great. So in an interview, when she was talking about this, she described how she got to conceptualize joy in a more historically true way of how Black literacy societies were imagining that. So for them, it was something more than having fun or celebrating, but as a sustained effort to recognize and honor the beauty of and within the earth. To the ancestors, joy was art and aesthetics. It was teaching our children to name the beauty within themselves and within humanity. Joy meant coming together for advocacy and problem solving to make the world better. Joy was wellness, healing, and justice. The ancestors needed joy then, and we all need it now. And if you could tell me, do you need joy in your life?
Yes, please.
Would you welcome a little bit more joy in the classroom too? And I think if we reframe what AI can take away from us by thinking, what can we bring? And again, for me, humanity is here, and I want to protect humanity against the AI threat. Well, but we are the ones who would be doing that, right? And so when we create learning experiences that encourage students to have fun and problem solve with their voices and perspectives centered, we can achieve this. So that's how I wanted to anchor this discussion. Because for me, promise of higher education is that we teach students and they learn. So if that's our promise, then we should be assessing their doing rather than assessing what machine is learning. Because if we are really putting emphasis on the results, right, then we are just looking at an end product that could be achieved within seconds. And I learned that in 2016, when my best French students submitted essays beautifully written with grammar points that they never studied in my classroom. And I asked them, what happened? They're like, well, I took my English text and I translated it with Google Translate in French. But it's my own text. I'm like, yes, but that's not your own language, right? And what really was surprising to me is those were best students. They still felt really short on time. They didn't feel confident enough that they could write 3 pages in French, though we talked about it in class. And for me, that was a wake-up call because I needed them to do something that they can achieve and that I could judge them on their progress, not on what I imagined they should be doing. And today, ChatGPT puts it even more into perspective because it now can help pretty much any discipline, right? And we'll talk about that. So then if we think about putting emphasis on the process rather than the results, we'll get to really the need for reflective learning activities, right? Activities that would be in person where we could have a dialogue and we can actually see students produce. Actually, linguistic production is the last stage, the most difficult, because very often students can read or can write, but when you have to immediately speak and in unscripted manner, it shows that you know the language. But I think it's the same thing. If they are able to talk about philosophy or biology in an unscripted, unrehearsed situation, that would show us that they know, right? That they have internalized the subject matter. And yet, we're back to these familiar dilemmas, right? We all want to cover as much as we can. We want them to develop the skills. We want to integrate everything. And of course, we're hoping that they will improve dispositionally, right? Become more inquisitive, open-minded, alert, motivated, intrinsically. Yes, we hope. And yet, time constraints. Now we're teaching more students than ever. I cry when I have to grade their work. I fall asleep because after the 40th, essay, you're like, oh my goodness, I still have 40 more to go, right? So all of that, it's not surprising that we want something else, or we want something help. And they want help as well, right? Because they're working, they have many classes, and that's why we definitely go to the technology. We're hoping, well, technology will help me save time. So the problem is that we're back to the good old competition and selection process, right? In the sense, before that, it was man against man. So you were stronger, you're smarter, so you can beat up the other guy, good, okay? Oh, then what happens? 20th century, now we're against the machine. And one of the breaking points for AI was when Deep Blue actually won against Kasparov. They're like, this is it. And I don't know if you've seen this documentary, Game Over. That's it, you lost against the machine. But it was a big step for AI learning to actually think better than a human being. Are we good? Well, today, I think the competition is actually between a human with a machine against another human with a machine who can use that machine better. So, of course, if you're going into a doom scenario there, we will be against the machines will take over and we will disappear, you can watch this movie, Transcendence. Johnny Depp, if you like Johnny Depp, depressing, we all die at the end. So I just ruined the movie for you. But if you are into that, I don't want to go into that scenario. I want to think about how we can think about technology with humanity, right? Helping us to think something better and become our friend rather than foe. So again, I told you, for me, the radical disruption was Google Translate, okay? And so what I found when I did the research, that it completely revolutionized the translation studies or the field of translation and the profession of the translation. Today, almost nobody translates purely. So you put the text through Google Translate or other similar machine translations, and then you post-edit. So, but still for post-editing, you need to know cultural material, you have to know idiomatic expressions and so on. So for our students, they cannot post-edit in the sense because it requires higher cultural knowledge, right? And linguistic knowledge, because the machine nowadays can actually do it super well. Well, we're thinking, well, it's writing because the machine can think and so on. Well, now, if you own Google Pixel Buds, you can do interpretation as well. So it's unscripted at the same time, real time. You put the Pixel Buds, and because they're produced by Google, Google Translate is connected, and so you hear the speech and you hear the translation in your ear. So I don't know if you ever used your camera with Google Translate. If you install Google Translate on your phone, and then you put the foreign text with your camera, and you say, I want to translate from this, for example, from Chinese to English, it will do the translation immediately for you. Okay, so is it helpful? Absolutely. My dad, who is right now in Marshall, loves it because he can communicate even if he doesn't speak English, right? The nurses could use Google Translate. He can say Google Translate translates, perfect, everything is great. What about me teaching French, right? So the question is, what is then ChatGPT going to disrupt? Well, guess what? Pretty much everything, right? Because not only it's a great text generator, and assistive writing now, Grammarly Go. I don't know if you've tried Grammarly Go. So Grammarly used to simply help you with punctuation and style. Grammarly Go will actually help you write and say, oh, you might switch the paragraphs here because da da da. So it's actually as assistive writing tool, right? But ChatGPT can write code. So for our friends in computing, that's scary, right? It can math equations and it can answer STEM questions pretty well. It actually if you do prompt and then you ask, is that the right answer? Stark difference between ChatGPT 3 and ChatGPT 4. ChatGPT 4 got 5 on AP scores for so many subjects. And for others, oh, it got 4. That's still pretty good. It passed bar exam. It passed SAT scores. I think it's 19th percentile for verbal, a little bit less for, I think, math, but it was still acceptable. So, but if you're working in art, right? Well, there are so many. I just put pixel, and I don't know if you use this, but it was one of many image generators, right? So, and they say we can generate in seconds any images from scratch. Well, let's say you're working in music or you're working for media studies. These voice and sound generators are incredible, again, and they say royalty free, we can do it all for you. So then if we're asking our students to create something, right, an image or a video, how do we know that they created because they know how to do it or the program created it for them? So the really question becomes the outreach of this technology is really scary. So I don't know. I probably don't have time to show this to you, unfortunately, but this is a wonderful YouTube video. We'll watch it maybe for 30 seconds, but you will be able to access it by clicking on that YouTube link. And when you access it, look at the description. Below the description, then you click on more. She has an entire blog of how to use ChatGPT, what prompts to use, and she explains the beginning of this video is really cool. Who wrote it? She did not write it. ChatGPT wrote it for her. And so the idea is truly, if you're creative and use this tool, you can get amazing results. Okay, so I'll just do 30 seconds.
And see how ChatGPT can help you speak, write, and understand English better. Trust me, you won't regret it. You know who wrote the introduction for this video? ChatGPT. In fact, I asked it to write a text for an English teacher introducing ChatGPT to her class, and then it was kind of boring, so I asked it to make it a bit more fun, like an introduction to a YouTube video. And that's what we got. The entire introduction was written by a robot, by ChatGPT. So what is ChatGPT really? For those who are not that familiar with art.
So again, it's a great resource and it's only 12 minutes. So maybe next day when you have lunch and you can watch it, that would be great. But she really shows the capacity of that program. And according to promoters of ChatGPT, there are 20 ways for them to help instructors to use ChatGPT. They can actually use ChatGPT to write lesson plans. They can create questions for comprehension questions on a text or fill in blank questions. You can create the whole unit plan, or you can ask them to assess your students if you provide a rubric. And so then you have students work and you say, please compare. You can actually do comparison between two works of students or against the work that they were reading. So you can test it for plagiarism, but you also can test it how well they understood the ideas. Again, this sounds wonderful, but yet the question, and especially for the group that I work with AI policy, what does it mean? We upload students' work, and if we upload students' work, then it becomes a question of legal rights, right? Copyrights. and also confidential questions, right? So all of that, we have to think about it as we're using this tool. But why do we want to use this tool? I could not give some film references, because for me, the reason we want to use them or students want to use them is because we always feel bad about our limitations, right? And if you look at the popular entertainment, we imagine Mike Ross, who has an amazing photographic memory, and he can do anything, and therefore he's great legal prosecutor, or he's not a prosecutor, a helper, right? Because he can memorize stuff really quickly. Or for example, Eddie, he's using neurotropic drugs, and they make his processing speed so quick that he can understand everything. So he would ace, what is critical thinking class right away, right? Or for example, Theodore, who is so upset and so depressed, but hey, he has a wonderful OS, Samantha, that will do the work for him, and she loves him, and thanks to her, he starts feeling joy in life, right? So if we think about our general dreams of bypassing our limitations, then it's not surprising that we're gonna ask technical productivity and efficiency. But we need to explain to students that training data that we provide to open ChatGPT or AI tools is the data that improves their accuracy, their capability and adaptability. Meanwhile, we don't have that training data in our heads. And I think when especially showing to students what they are missing by using Google Translate, when I did presentation for ACTFL in 2019, the response was amazing. We presented with my colleague from UCLA, Laurence Bernier-Higney, to a group of 150 people. I've never had so many people attend my talk. And right after that, we were invited to contribute to this journal, LA Journal on Machine Translation, because every language instructor in that classroom was dealing with students using Google Translate, and they didn't know how to use them responsibly, right? And so my work that I did for this pedagogical intervention, of course, was based on my work with Donna Warren and Critical Thinking Initiative, because I use reasoning maps to help students to have their argument, being able to defend their position and present that in class and contradict other positions in the classroom. It was a joyful moment because for 45 minutes, students spoke in French. When they finished that class, they said, Madame, I can speak French. And that is still what I do today. I use other tools that help them not to concentrate on accuracy. So I don't ask them to write 3 pages in French, and I know that it will be flawless because it's translated by Google Translate, but I ask them to think, write their ideas, structure their ideas. Yes, they can use sentences that they can translate with Google Translate, but when they perform in class, when they have to speak, there is no Google Translate. They made that language their own, right? And that's when they become much more reflective on their knowledge of French. I had several students come and tell me at the end, it's like, Madame, I need to study more vocabulary. Yeah. And I think, I've been telling you that for 3 years, but now you know, now you understood because you were able to actually participate. And Laurence's intervention was to show the limitation of AI tools, of Google Translate, because when you translate, or the machine translates for you, what you're losing your agency. Agency as a translator, as a creator, and then how do you reconcile the idea that, first of all, it's somebody else's work, and Laurence tells her students, put co-author Google Translate, if they did it with Google Translate, right? So we're all on the same page, but also then we know that those ideas are probably not your ideas. So ChatGPT right now, some instructors say that it's wonderful to use it for ideation process, right? Oh, it can give me ideas. Well, that's great, it could, but does that mean that now you no longer feel the need to generate ideas because you have a machine that will be generating ideas? Because you can actually debate the bot, right? And so if you were debating the bot, are you learning? But what are you learning and how? And I think this is where I stop and ask you to think about it and turn either to your partner or hopefully do the writing by going to this link, because I'm hoping that maybe we'll get some questions answered and ideas, and then they will be used by CITL. So I'm gonna go back to the 3 questions. So, example of a positive, productive way to use technology in your classroom, then explain one concern, because I know there are many, but maybe you could choose just one. And then if you have already found a way how to bypass that limitation. So we're gonna give you 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Okay. Are there any questions in the chat?
So we're doing about it tomorrow's last one.
It's just good to use that in I know we used that in like the Dave especially because that's generally I know I'm a couple of students limitations so that students understand especially thinking about responsibility. What are some I don't know what you did. I think you know the idea of the system writing. So the like searching keywords, thinking of keywords to search in the database and things like that. But I think preferencing everything with the fact of where you use that for it next week, I think and that there's I will be a part of it, for you, but you know, it's true going on those roads. That's your instructor when told you we're not seeing anybody. So I maybe it's related to some of that writing, especially start with the same thing. And I know what I'm saying isn't right. I'll put it in and then generally suggest something more appropriate. And then I put it in my I use a lot of like chat and so I take those out because I don't speak like that. But so have you used it?
Personally, but not for that. But I played around with it to see if I could get it to generate arguments that conform to sort of Jewish. And it cannot. I'm sure I'll be able to do that eventually. And
have you tried the bidding chat feature?
I have.
Okay.
And it
Because that's GPT-4, so it's
okay.
much more advanced.
It's still still. but I'm sure it's probably next time. But interesting, but and also I haven't like define all of the different, right? For the sake of this conversation, this is what I mean by those terms. And then say, now, given that understanding, generate an argument that has this feature called, and if it does that, that's really important. And I'll be able to generate arguments for my students to analyze about the content that's about thinking about dinosaurs or thinking about right? Because that's by far the hardest is just.
So thank you so much. I heard just a little bit, pieces, of your conversation. Maybe you could share, like, let's answer number 3.
So my thing this semester is to have the students do more work. I have a really small class, which is great. But they're presenting things at the board. And so, okay, you went to the internet to get unstuck on this question, you know. Explain it. So it's not just, yeah, I went here, I turned it in and there's no, yeah, so they explain and we talk and there's no, this is not meant to be a polished, finished, complete, even thing, you know, it's just how can we move forward and talk about whatever. And that's a bigger part of the grade than it's been before. So I feel
How
good
do you
about
feel that students are actually grasping better mathematical concepts?
So they're engaged better. They're hopefully getting some more confidence. I don't know how to measure that, but you know, in their own ability to do things. But what I'm having trouble with is, okay, we have this great start. And then we go on to the next great start. And then we go on to, anyway, I try and, you know, there's a wrap up point a week later, but it's, we're not getting to the final finish. Good.
Solution?
Yeah, so
What
there's
courses?
an upper level math topology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which is meant to be, it's very survey-ish, you know, there are lots of different topics, so that you go lightly into a lot of different areas. But still, we're a little too light, right? So, yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the thing I was focused on is better than, but then it's like, ooh, this is so.
But this is actually, Cindy, a perfect transition to this slide and the next slide. Okay, because I'm also thinking about it and debating in my head, what do we want, right? And I'm going to show you this slide to take away the mystery. But do we perceive our students as human doers, right? Or are we going to allow ourselves to think about as human beings now versus machine learning? If we now know that machine is learning so well, so do we really still want them to do the same task that they used to do 20, 30 years ago? Because we know the moment they step out of the university, they're not going to be doing it on their own. They will be doing it with the machine, right? So then, is the time now to rethink that now that you think that they're more confident, they're more engaged, could we be measuring that as the assessment of their learning? And I'm going to come back to that because I truly, this is like my assessment coordinator hat. I'm thinking new quality initiative right there, right? To rethink of the assessment process. But before we do that, we need to learn, right? And Nancy was very nice to share with me what she's been doing. She's been learning a lot, and Cyril is really doing an amazing job of bringing to our attention all these new techniques, all the new discoveries, because everything changes pretty much daily, right, with AI. And so the course Teaching with AI by Auburn University seems like a fantastic campus course. And I'd like to take it. And I think Cyril, right, Nancy, is thinking about maybe sponsoring some licenses for
Yes.
instructors.
Yes. So we're working on licensing it. That's one of Aaron Speetson's projects. So,
Because we don't know how to retool our boxes, but we need to do it. And here, 17 ideas of kind of AI supportive but not inclusive learning activities, right? So you could, first of all, start with code of conduct. Discuss in your class, what are your expectations for ChatGPT or AI translation, right? So I talk to my students and then they say, yes, madam, you're right, it's cheating. We shouldn't be using it for the entire text. We might use it for words here and there. So already bringing awareness to the tool, right? Then hands-on assignments or debates, for example, when they had to use the language in the classroom, even if they used Google Translate as a supportive tool, they still had to produce on their own. So personal reflection, just to go back really quickly to Rebecca Stevens' example, I thought that was ingenious, right? So she brought the discussion board and you have to state what another classmate said in the class. Of course, it's wonderful. There are smaller classrooms, for example, but even if it's not a small classroom, but you assign students to present and they have to reflect on the presentation by saying which student, which group said it, then you know what? ChatGPT was not present in your classroom. So ChatGPT would not know. And you would actually see that it was fake, right? So for detection, if it's not possible to detect otherwise, right? So peer reviews, where you actually give the authority to students to look at different aspects of the assignments. In-person or video presentations, and of course, my favorite, oral examinations. I grew up with that in Russia and in France. Pretty much, 50% of your grade was the oral examination at the end, so you practice. But again, the benefits of that is that then you were able to explain that to somebody else. Mm-hmm. So we don't train students currently for oral examination, but we might think about it. Of course, all my French colleagues were like, yep, back to les oraux. Okay, let's do it. Because you cannot fake it, or you can fake it by actually becoming a French speaker, right? Authentic assessments that deal with real life situation will be AI kind of supporting it, not for cheating. Time limited assignments or individualized assignments, time staggered submissions. And I think most of us do that, where we ask for maybe an outline, then a first paragraph, then you have the polished product, right? So then students, it's much more difficult for them to cheat because they have to do it in incremental steps. Of course, capstone projects, especially when they have to present this later on to the class, or interactive quizzes, group work, and reflective journals definitely will be good indications of students learning, right? But I want to come back to this question, because if knowledge is now readily available anytime they have their iPhone or iPad, then testing their knowledge, are we testing their knowledge or testing their ability to find that knowledge, right? Skills. Are we testing their skills without the help from AI? But if you look on YouTube videos, just for fun, I was looking at coding, right? There are so many explanations of how to code and save yourself time, because you can put to ChatGPT saying, okay, I'm in this environment, but I'm working with the client who is using this software. Can you please write me the code? And the machine writes it. And then you can ask actually ChatGPT to write the email explaining what would be the best way of implementing that code. Like, really? Okay. And then of course thinking, practical, doing meal plans for the week, right? It used to be the glory and pride of a good housewife. She could, do the budgeting and think about different cuisines. Yeah, I know. an ideal world. But now the machine, you can tell the ChatGPT, I like, Japanese, French cuisine. I'm on a budget. Can you please create meal plan for me and tell me where to find these ingredients? Boom. So again, let's rethink this, right? And I think it's the time we rethink it simultaneously as we're learning the tools, because then we will save time for ourselves, right? Because, of course, speaking French, learning French, and thinking about French Enlightenment, I could not remember what Jacques Rousseau said in his famous treatise on education in French. Oserais-je exposer ici la plus grande, la plus importante, la plus utile règle de l'éducation? Ce n'est pas de gagner du temps, c'est d'en perdre. It's a beautiful paradox, right? It's not to save time, but to lose time, right? But what I think what he meant is that the most useful role of education, especially in AI-supported times, is not about saving time, despite the fact that business will tell you, oh yes, it's going to save you time, okay? Or for example, paralegals, it will say, oh yes, it will save time. Okay, save time to do what? To forget that we are humans, that we need to help each other, that we need to listen to each other. So I think if we say that it is about taking time, right? Taking time to learn and taking time to discover and to experience joy in discovery. And if we as an institution can do that and help our students, I don't know, I think we would be better. So our next quality initiative could be assessment of dispositional improvement, because we could say that our students learn with technology, then become more confident because they can use this technology, they become more marketable, right? And they save time so they can take time to learn more things. But maybe I'm too optimistic, so I don't know. So I think we have maybe like 5 minutes for questions. What do you think? Do you think I'm too far away from thinking? Is it too? Yes.
I just want to apologize for showing up so late. I thought it was at 5 o'clock.
Oh, so then you were too early. That's wonderful. Thank you. No, but do you think, I really think that this is our time to think about assessment, not as a scary, we don't know what we're doing, or students are cheating, so why should we assess this? But then let's assess what we think they should be doing or how they should be growing. Questions?
It all comes down to learning outcomes, doesn't it? And what it is that you express as the learning goals of your course, so that you can align the activities so that they have a platform to achieve those.
That's excellent remark. But let's think about GP, right? Let's think about humanities learning outcome, right? For example, we think of reading closely. What does that mean? Comprehension. But if ChatGPT can write a summary in 1 second of that book, do I know that they understood it or not? But if they're able to talk about it, can I gauge that? Can I gauge from their conversations with their peer reviewers, for example, right? I don't know. Think critically, right? Donna, we talked about this assessment, and for me, argument maps are still the best way to see, because I could see their thought process, and I tell them, I don't care about, how well you write grammar, for example, in French, or spelling. I want to see what you're thinking, where you're looking for evidence to prove your point, because then right away, I don't need to read a 3-page paper. I prefer not to read.
So we do have a couple of comments from the online folks. Carrie says, I want to think along these lines too, Vera. Thank you for this refreshing presentation. And Jill said, thank you so much, Vera. This was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.